I was watching this video put out by Yishai Flesher, who I've been following since like around 2005, possibly a couple years earlier than that. And anyway, he was praising Michele Bachmann, and here's what she had to say about the peace deal.
I love Pete Hegseth. Went to church with him since he was in high school. Beautiful believer. But he had a meeting where he was with I think his counterpart from Qatar, saying that now we are going to host Qatari F-15s in Boise, Idaho, on an American air base. So why are we rewarding the chief funder of terrorism, the nation that has housed and hosted Hamas and the Muslim Brotherhood, a radical terrorist organization? Right. Why are we rewarding them when their goal is, and they've been propagandizing our students against Israel? Why are we doing this? So I'm asking these questions and thinking, I don't know, I'm looking at this 20-point plan, and they're talking about taking away Israel's land, which would violate Joel chapter 3, that's right, verses 1 through 3, and perhaps take away control, or at least at minimum allowing Israel the right to annex, which means to put their sovereignty over Judea Samaria, which since 1967 Israel owned Gaza and they've owned Judea Samaria. So under international law, this is their land. And now it looks like under the Trump plan, the plan is saying, yeah, Israel, you've owned it since 67, but Gaza, we're going to sever that off.
So she mentions the prophet Joel, chapter 3, verses 1 through 3. So I was reading it and noticed a couple things. Now, the thing about the prophets, after Moses, like I think they're called the major prophets and the minor prophets. People have them classified that way. But, I mean, a prophet is a prophet. There's only like one prophet in Judaism that I know of that has supremacy, and that's Moses. So that when Maimonides produced his codification of the Torah, it was said of him, from Moses to Moses, there's been no one like Moses. So, but then you have these other prophets that come along later, and I really subscribe to Dr. Emmanuel Shochet's view on these prophets, and in that he says they didn't really say much. And what he means by that, as he explains, is that they didn't come to make any radical alterations to Judaism or to Torah observance. They pretty much just exhort the people to rededicate themselves to Torah observance, or to turn away from their sins and back to Torah observance. And then they'll make predictions about something that's supposed to usually take place within the lifetime of the prophet or the people hearing the prophecy. However, because these texts become somewhat venerated for having been fulfilled or having been spoken of by a prophet, and we long for the words of a prophet in our time. So we hang on to these books. And then because we hang on to these books, we seek to apply them in our time. But usually what happens is if we ever do see a fulfillment of some of these prophecies that already were fulfilled, then we tend to widen the parameters of that fulfillment, so that the things that were prophesied may not exactly line up with the way things take place in our time, right? But you using this kind of some call it a pesherist interpretation of the text, we we play more fast and loose with the text, and you see this happening in the Dead Sea Scrolls. You especially see it happening in the Christian scriptures, where they'll even change the wording of the prophecies in order to shove a square peg through a round hole, or vice versa, whatever the case may be. So people would be looking at Joel chapter 3 and more than likely looking for a modern day interpretation of it, thinking that it's going to be fulfilled here in our day, whether it was fulfilled in the days of Joel or not. So there's a need with Bible believers that every word of the Bible may still need to be fulfilled. Otherwise it's like, why are we hanging on to it? And they can't conceive that we might be hanging on to something just out of honor or respect or veneration of its place in the history of the Jewish people, or as a memorial of what the Creator has done in the past. So that's one reason why you still have Christians awaiting the so-called second coming, when Titus and his legions were the fulfillment of the little apocalypse of Matthew about the destruction of the temple, the siege of Jerusalem. The reason that was fulfilled in the first century is because Jesus is a literary disguise for Titus Flavius. So the man who accomplished the deeds then had a prophecy retroactively written or backdated so that he would fulfill it, which, he already fulfilled it. There was no prophecy that he was going to do the thing that actually existed before the act of him doing it. He just had a prophecy written retroactively so that it would appear that he fulfilled prophecy and was a divine instrument against the Jewish people. So, anyway, before my voice gives out, let's look at Joel chapter 3, verse 1, starting there and going to verse 3, and I'll actually proceed farther than that. And we're using the Revised Standard Version because really there's no perfect English translation, so this is what we're using. For behold, in those days and at that time, when I restore the fortunes of Judah and Jerusalem, I will gather all the nations, all the Gentiles, all the Goyim, or even all the nations, and bring them down to the valley of Jehoshaphat, and I will enter into judgment with them there. Excuse me, I already need a cough drop. I don't talk much. It's only when I'm making these videos that I do a lot of talking, and my voice just isn't used to it. And anyway, so let's continue. Well, no, not quite ready to continue. So And I will enter into judgment with them there, with the nations, on account of my people and my heritage Israel, because they have scattered them among the nations and have divided up my land. And have cast lots for my people, and have given a boy for an harlot, a boy for a harlot, and have sold a girl for wine, and have drunk it. So here it's talking about dividing up the land, and but also dividing up the people, the children of Israel, which is what Christianity tries to do. Is it tries to, like Amalek, poach the children of Israel who are on the fringes, the lesser educated children of Israel, and seduce them with their vain imaginations and their stupid idols, their dumb idols, their absent, tardy, and impotent false messiah. They're just shills and peddlers of idolatry. Now, granted, there are many fine moral ideas in Christianity, and we certainly appreciate that Christians, as a religion, don't claim to be a religion of peace and then turn around and behead people on the streets. But before the Roman Flavians, non-Jews who wanted to worship the biblical deity, they didn't need Christianity to do it. They were making pilgrimages to Jerusalem and frequenting the temple in Jerusalem in the court of the Gentiles. There was this vast court of the temple that was for all the nations of the world, including Israel. That was a place where the children of Israel, Jews, could, I guess, schmooze, if you want to, with non-Jewish pilgrims who were worshippers of the biblical deity. So, or the creator. I could use the, I'm not going to say the tetragrammaton, the personal name of the creator, but we know who I'm talking about, and it's not Jesus. So, but it was because the Roman Flavians carried out this military campaign against the Jewish people down through Galilee. I think they even spent some time around the Samaria area and into Judea, laying siege eventually to Jerusalem and destroying the temple, that these Roman Flavian generals, Vespasian and Titus, one of them, Vespasian, the father, ascended to the imperial throne while that military campaign was still in progress. The son brought home the triumphal procession to Jerusalem so that on the Arch of Titus, the son, it depicts the menorah that they carried off from the temple. Now, this military campaign didn't exterminate the Jewish people, but it was already the case, as we can see from the writings of Tacitus, that Romans had a very anti-Jewish perspective. There's all kinds of racisms in Tacitus's description Jews and the Judeans. So, so given that the military campaign didn't wipe out the Jewish people, they invented the Christian myth as a sort of counterfeit consolation religion. It was meant to target the Jewish people and continue through propaganda to work to destroy the Jews and Judaism. Now, Titus had already carried off like 97,000 Jews into slavery throughout the empire. Uh, so, you know, who knows how many of those were completely assimilated so that into Gentile culture so that they lost their Jewish identity. If they even had children, being slaves. Who knows? So, but they wanted to continue to focus their efforts against the Jewish people. So they created this Christian myth, and by in so doing, they inoculated the non-Jews who were previously disposed to turn to the Jewish people for guidance on how to exercise monotheism. They now turned to the Roman Flavian idolatry found in the Christian scriptures. So the Roman Flavians repurchased non-Jews into idolatry using Christianity. So, to continue. What are you to me, O Tyre and Sidon, and all the regions of Philistia? Are you paying me back for something? If you are paying me back, I will requite your deed upon your own head swiftly and speedily. For you have taken my silver and my gold, and have carried my rich treasures into your temples. Now, reading this on the surface, you might think that the Creator really has a bit of a grudge about silver and gold. Like as if the Creator needs precious metals. But then notice what he says in the next verse. You have sold the people of Judah and Jerusalem to the Greeks, removing them far from their own border. This is what Christianity tries to do now, is poach the Jewish people and bring them back into Hellenistic style religion. Which, Greeks, that would be that would be Hellenic, but the Hellenistic period is I think both Greek and Roman influence. So, but now I will stir them up from the place to which you have sold them, and I will requite your deed upon your own head. I will sell your sons and your daughters into the hand of the sons of Judah, and they will sell them to the Sabaeans, to a nation far off, for the Creator has spoken. Now, I don't know to what extent this actually took place back then, back in Joel's day. I'd have to study it more. But I want to note that verse 5, for you have taken my silver and my gold and have carried my rich treasures into your temples. Maybe on the surface reading, maybe it really is talking about silver and gold. But from the parallelism and from the context, it seems clear that the Creator is saying that his rich treasures, his silver and his gold, are the boys in verse 3 and the girls in verse 3. And in verse 6, the people of Judah and Jerusalem. So I'm not sure that that even the evangelical Christian perspective on the role of Jews or the place of Jews and the Creator's grand plan is sufficient. This passage is saying that the Jewish people are the Creator's silver and gold. They are his rich treasures. I kind of feel like our perspective of the Jewish people has been woefully insufficient given this verse. So now let us continue in verse 9. Proclaim this among the nations, among the Gentiles, the Goyim, the nations of the world. Prepare war, stir up the mighty men. Let all the men of war draw near, let them come up. Beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am a warrior. Now this is the inverse of how we typically see these or recite these words in their arrangement in Isaiah. But these are the words on the Isaiah wall. They shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation. And this is from Isaiah chapter 2 verse 4. And it's on the Isaiah wall. The swords into plowshares reference at the United Nations is both a sculpture in front of the building and an inscription on a wall across the street known as the Isaiah Wall. The words come from the book of Isaiah chapter 2 verse 4, which symbolizes peace and disarmament. The sculpture was a gift from the Soviet Union in 1959. How wonderful. And the Isaiah Wall is a popular gathering spot for demonstrators. Now, I think on the other side of the street, I've not actually been there, but on the other side of the street is this statue. Let's see if it'll let me see it. And there's this bronze sculpture, let us beat our, and a 3D representation of a human being, an idol. Let us beat our swords into plowshares. And I guess this was created by the same guy. And it depicts a figure of a man holding a hammer aloft in one hand and a sword in the other, which he is making into a plowshare. So the Soviets were looks like they appear to have been using the of course I don't know what this guy Evgeny Vutachik, basically Eugene, I don't know what his political perspective was, but it seems like maybe there was an attempt to use the United Nations as a way to get America to disarm while the Soviet Union was building up its arms. And it was because Reagan and the military buildup under the Reagan administration that basically the Soviet Union had to dive for the mat and pretend that they had collapsed, because we were beating them in the arms race. So it was after the Soviet Union dove for the mat, and then Bill Clinton, he heads to Ukraine and convinces Ukraine to give up its nuclear deterrent, which I guess they were actually Soviet nukes, but they were in the possession of the Ukrainians. And he convinced them to give up their nuclear deterrent in exchange for security guarantees. Now, security guarantees from a Democrat don't make me laugh. And that's what happened. Was later, under Biden, where's the security guarantees? The Russians invaded, and what are you doing to protect them? Just giving them weapons? So, yeah, when America tries to extend more security guarantees to Ukraine, you've got to look at that with a jaundiced eye. So, so this is at the United Nations. Now, if we go back to Joel chapter 3, and it says, beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I'm a warrior. Now, this is a really good description of the United Nations because, as Trump recently pointed out, the United Nations has been completely ineffective at their mission of bringing peace to the world, and that he's done more to end recent wars than the United Nations, who's barely even lifted a finger. And yet the United Nations works so hard in Israel and the Palestinian territories to undermine the state of Israel, that's the one place where they really seem to be carrying out war, at least not in an actual blow-to-blow sense, but in a more sinister way. So, but as far as peacekeepers, the United Nations has made it pretty clear they couldn't secure a donut. So, I think it's fitting to say that they're the weak ones and let them say, I am a warrior. So then the Creator says, hasten and come, all you nations round about. Basically, bring it on. You know, come at me, bro. Gather yourselves there. Bring down your warriors, O Creator. Let the nations bestir themselves and come up to the valley of Jehoshaphat, for there I will sit to judge all the nations round about. Put in the sickle, for the harvest is ripe. Go in, tread, for the winepress is full. The vats overflow, for their wickedness is great. Multitudes, multitudes in the valley of decision, for the day of the Creator is near in the valley of decision. The sun and the moon are darkened, and the stars withdraw their shining. And the Creator roars from Zion, and utters his voice from Jerusalem, and the heavens and the earth shake. But the Creator is a refuge to his people, a stronghold to the people of Israel. So you shall know that I am the Creator your God, who dwells in Zion, my holy mountain. And Jerusalem shall be holy, and strangers shall never again pass through it. Now, whether that means whether non-Jews will be able to make a pilgrimage there, or whether it, by saying pass through it, it's describing non-Jewish armies invading it. I'm not sure. So, anyway, so those are the two things that I noticed in this chapter that Michele Bachmann references is the immense worth that the Creator places on each individual member of the children of Israel, and also how the United Nations seems to be alluded to here, almost as if they set themselves up for this prophecy, and how the United Nations attempts to make war against Israel, albeit in a weak way. So I think that the Gentiles, they're trying to carry out a new final solution. And I think that the wannabe Mahdi, Obama, tried to hasten this plan by facilitating the soft invasion of jihadists throughout the West, so that the nations who are allied to Israel would no longer be able to depend upon them for assistance, even though Israel is called an ally by these nations. Then, as described here in Joel, maybe then there's a plan to surround Israel and exterminate the Jewish people once and for all. But, you know, the Jewish people, they're intelligent. They understand that there's some security and redundancy. Like, your family line is going to have more of a chance of survival if you have 14 children rather than one child. Especially if these children are moving to places throughout the world, right? So you might you might exterminate my children here, but I have children surviving over there. So, but in making these Western nations inhospitable to Jewish presence, you're now taking away their option of redundancy. You know, how far things would have to go to make this a reality, I don't know, but the Gentile endgame doesn't seem to have changed since the days of the Roman Flavians. It seems to be to exterminate the Jewish people. And I think that the reason for this is what was said. Who said it? It wasn't Mark Twain, I don't think. How can you prove the existence of God? Just look at the Jewish people. Someone said this. So to continue what I was saying about this, what might be a new Gentile final solution, my question to Google AI was, who said that the survival of the Jewish people is proof of the existence of God? So, I guess it's Gemini AI says, or answers. The philosopher Blaise Pascal famously responded, "The Jews, Your Majesty, the Jews," when King Louis XIV of France asked for proof of God's existence. Similarly, the saying is attributed to others, such as Frederick the Great's physician saying, "The Jews, sir, the Jews," in response to a similar question. Other thinkers, including Thomas Newton and Mark Twain, have also commented on the unique and miraculous survival of the Jewish people as evidence of a supernatural force. Who is this? T- T- Thomas Newton? Is an 18th century English bishop, cleric, and biblical scholar. Huh. Is he related to, my brain wants to say Wayne Newton. um, uh, anyway, I don't know too much about this guy. So, let's continue. Blaise Pascal, when asked by King Louis XIV to prove the existence of the supernatural, the French philosopher reportedly replied, "Why, the Jews, your majesty, the Jews." Pascal saw the survival of the Jewish people as a supernatural phenomenon with no logical explanation. Frederick the Great's physician, according to one account, the physician of the King of Prussia gave a two-word answer, the Jews, when asked for proof of God's existence. Otto von Bismarck, in the 1800s, the Kaiser of Prussia is said to have asked his advisor for proof of God's existence, and Bismarck replied, "The Jews, sir, the Jews." Other thinkers. Many others have noted the miraculous survival of the Jewish people throughout history, suggesting it points to a divine source. Bishop Thomas Newton called their preservation an illustrious act of divine providence. Mark Twain, a skeptic, wrote in 1899, "All things are mortal but the Jew. All other forces pass, but he remains. What is the secret of his immortality?" So, why might the Gentiles want to exterminate the Jewish people? Well, if the existence of the Jewish people is taken as proof of God's existence, then they might want to wipe out that proof so that they can prove, from their perspective, that the Creator doesn't exist. Um, I guess the logic follows because there are prophecies and promises that are made to the children of Israel in the Hebrew Tanakh that if they are wiped out and there is no one to receive the fulfillment of those promises, then that, I guess, invalidates the scriptures, which some say can't be invalidated. So, and really, I mean, I would think that any future attempts to exterminate the Jewish people would be as unsuccessful, especially when liberals seem to be the driving force behind them, behind these efforts, because the liberals are just, they make great artists, but they make really garbage leaders. So, asking them to lead you to the success of any project is asking a bit much of them. So, I think that's the reason. And so, why might they want to prove that God is dead? Because then that takes away the challenge to their authority, and then they can assume total authority over mankind. These elites and these elite organizations who have designs and plans and opinions about what should be done with the rest of humanity. But as it stands, the existence of the Jewish people is an inspiration not just to the Jewish people, but also to Christians. And it provides, for many, a proof of the Creator's existence. And so his kingship stands in challenge to the leadership of the feckless Gentile elites. So that's why the Gentiles might want to carry out a truly final solution so that they can disprove God's existence and then assume total authority over mankind.